President Trump says Governor Tim Walz called him and now wants to work together as tensions continue to escalate in Minnesota. The president posted on Truth Social it was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Thom call him and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. We've had tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and virtually every other place that we have touched. And even in Minnesota, crime is way down, but both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. Joining us this morning to discuss is retired FBI Special Agent in Charge and former head of the Chicago PD, Jody Weiss. Quite a turn of events over here, Jody. Definitely a different narrative than what we have heard, obviously, from the governor. You've discussed this before, that much of this violence could have already been resolved if the state had cooperated with the feds from the get-go. Both in giving them protection, but also in turning over any criminal illegal aliens, which is what Trump was talking about in that particular post he made. There's a few things going on here that you want to discuss when it comes to options, though. Either they work together or Trump has to incite the Insurrection Act. Explain that.
Yeah, until yesterday, Jan, I thought we were looking at the Insurrection Act. The locals simply didn't have the resources to provide a safe area for ICE to operate in. And you've got 1,300 people sitting in state prisons in Minnesota. Now, I don't think too many of these people will be your neighbors. They're convicted, not charged, convicted of murder, convicted of child rape, convicted of human trafficking. So I know they talk a lot about neighbors. I don't think you or I or any normal person would want them as your neighbors. But you know what? Until yesterday, I thought the only chance to bring peace to the streets was the Insurrection Act. But you know what we saw yesterday was the art of the deal. You've got President Trump talking to the governor, and he sends out Thom, who I think is the leading expert on immigration enforcement in the country. So I think we have reason to be optimistic. If you think about it, Homeland actually got the Presidential Rank Award from President Obama. So here's a guy who has worked with multiple administrations, sitting down and trying to probably work out a way where both sides can claim victory.
I was going to say, because one thing that a lot of critics say you can't do is you can't pull out, because then you're showing that all you got to do is riot and get real crazy, and then the federal government will leave your town. That's the message it would send if they pulled out, correct?
Yeah, 100%. It's got to be something that both sides can claim we were successful. They've had great success there. They've arrested a lot of people. But yeah, you can't say like, we riot, you leave. So there's going to have to be something worked out. Maybe all president, if you've got to reduce the footprint, you've got to calm the emotions a little bit. But you are 100% right. You can't leave and just say, this is the blueprint for future blue cities. Have riots and you'll force the feds out.
These developments come as reports indicate the FBI investigating the alleged coordination and funding of the destructive demonstrations, with increasing evidence that these anti-ICE groups are using encrypted online platforms like Signal to track and target federal agents. What do you know about this?
Yeah, Signal's a really good app if you want to engage in clandestine operations. It's effective. And these things don't just happen. You know, when Pretti got shot, you had hundreds of people responding within minutes. But you know, Jan, what's even more alarming, if it's true, we're hearing reports that you've got state and local officials as part of these Signal group chats. Think of that, state and local officials encouraging people to come out and interfere with federal law enforcement operations, which is a crime. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. But if that's true, that's a big, big deal.
Yeah, in the meantime, there's still this massive fraud investigation. So the feds are not going away anytime soon. How do you see this all playing out?
Yeah, no, ma'am, they are not leaving. I think we're going to see a reduced footprint at the U.S. Border Patrol and ICE. I think that's going to happen. Both sides are going to claim victory. I do hope that those 1,300 people sitting in prison will be turned over and the situation will calm down a bit. And then the feds can get back to what they need to be doing, which is this fraud investigation. Americans said in 2024 that they wanted illegals out of the country. But this thing is too chaotic. People don't like to see that. But I don't know of one American that feels good getting ripped off by people who, you know, are just stealing from us when that money could be going to so many needing people. So now I think we can get back to focus on that fraud investigation. People need to go to jail and need to go to prison for what they've done.
Retired FBI Special Agent in Charge and former head of the Chicago PD, Jody Weiss. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jan.
I'm national correspondent Kayla Gaskins in Washington. President Trump announcing border czar Thom will head to Minneapolis as his administration defends an expanded immigration crackdown that has sparked protests that have turned deadly.
Whoa!
escalating political rhetoric, and another deadly turn in Minneapolis.
Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets.
President Trump announced he is sending border czar Thom Homan to Minnesota following the Saturday shooting of a protester by federal agents in the Twin Cities. The incident marks the second fatal shooting involving immigration officers in Minneapolis this month. In a Truth Social post Monday morning, the president said he spoke with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, calling it a very good call, and Walz calling it productive. Trump telling Walz he wants them to turn over all illegal immigrants in state prisons and jails. He also wants local and state authorities to work with federal forces on the ground.
If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota.
The Trump administration has blamed state and local leaders for language it says has encouraged protesters and created dangerous and chaotic conditions on the ground.
This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers.
Such as Governor Walz comparing ICE in Minneapolis to the Nazis in 1930s Europe.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
Democrats and local leaders in Minnesota, however, say the real issue is what they call excessive force by federal agents and the defense of what they see as indefensible actions. This shooting has led Minnesota officials to mobilize the National Guard as protesters clash with federal agents, and demands for accountability have come from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, calling for transparent investigations. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C. A political fight unfolding on Capitol Hill. President Donald Trump once again going after sanctuary cities, and a gut check for Democrats over ICE funding. In the last 48 hours, the killing of Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old ICU nurse by federal immigration agents in Minnesota, is exploding into a national crisis. That outrage now setting off a battle over funding on Capitol Hill, the president striking overnight on Truth Social, calling on Congress to pass legislation to end sanctuary cities, Trump already threatening funding.
Additionally, starting February 1st, we're not making any payments to sanctuary cities or states having sanctuary cities because they do everything possible to protect criminals.
Senate Democrats taking a page from Trump's playbook, threatening this week to sink a spending package that includes funding for DHS, which oversees ICE. Senator Chuck Schumer calling the DHS bill woefully inadequate to rein in ICE. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, a hard no, demanding overhaul to ICE operations.
What could we do to overhaul them? Oh, let me start. New leadership, stopping these surges across the country, not just in my state, training them like they were supposed to be trained.
This time, Democrats may have the stronger hand as outrage grows from their base over the killing of Alex Pretti. As for the president, his attempts have been stopped cold. On Friday, a federal judge ruled the Trump administration must keep funding child care subsidies and other social service programs to 5 Democrat-led states, including Minnesota, after Trump tried to freeze $10 billion in funding. So what happens if the Democrats vote no? It could lead to a partial government shutdown. As for ICE, it may not matter at all. That's because they got a $75 billion boost under the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.